Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things you want to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle by the frame so the suspension is hanging. The next thing you want to do, assuming you have a center cover, is go ahead and carefully pop it off of there, give it a quick inspection, and set it aside. After you have that off of there, continue on to removing all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our upper control arm. Now if you're not planning on replacing the upper control arm at the same time as doing your cam bolts, you can go ahead and carefully do this one cam bolt at a time. We'll leave the other side in. The process will be the same for either side. We're going to start with this one right here. When we're removing the nut, which is on this forward side right here, you want to be extremely careful with your ratchet. You have an ABS wire right here and some other miscellaneous lines. Make sure you have everything tucked away and there's no way that you could potentially pinch it or damage it in any way. Now I'll continue with my 21mm socket. I'm going to put it right on the mounting nut here. As I start turning this, I don't have to worry about holding the other side. Looking up along where my index finger is, you can tell that there's a tab, and this will spin as I start turning this. But eventually it's going to lock in up against the frame, and it'll prevent the bolt from moving as I continue. All right, so there's my mounting nut. I always like to give my hardware a quick inspection. I know, in this instance, we're replacing this anyways, but it's a good idea to know what the original equipment looked like. Now I'll continue with a small hammer. I'm just going to go ahead and bonk on the bolt a little bit. It's going to come driving out. You're going to see this ear right here start pulling out of the frame. Now as I start pulling this out, there's the possibility that this could want to twist. So when we go to put in the new one, it might not seem like it wants to line up. Just keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and wiggle this around. Go ahead and take off this piece from the front side of the frame. You can go ahead and set that aside. Okay friends, let's get ready for our installation. We're going to go ahead and take our cam bolt here. I'll take one of my washers, slide it right on there. Now I want you to pay attention to the bolt itself. As you can tell, the majority of it is rounded, but as you start spinning it, you're going to find a flattened area. That's important to know, because the next piece needs to fit on there perfectly. One side of the adjustment piece has numbers on it. We want to have the numbers facing away from where the frame would be. Looking at this hole right here, you can tell that it's almost a perfect circle, but it does have one area that's a straight line. Go ahead and line that up with the bolt. Now we can take this and we're going to start sliding it through the frame, right here, through the control arm, all the way out through the other side. Now as we start putting this through the frame, what you're going to notice is that the rounded area of the cam adjuster is going to hit up against the frame on the inside here. There's basically 2 lips facing down like this. So we'll start sliding it right down and in there. It should fit in just barely. Once we have everything together, when you're making your adjustment, that's what's going to pivot the control arm out and in as needed. I'll go ahead and move that control arm around as needed until I get the holes all lined up. Okay. Now at this point, it's extremely important to make sure that that cam adjuster is inside the slots on the frame that I had mentioned. If it's sitting outside of it and you put it all together and then tighten it, you might feel as though it's perfect. But then you drive down the road, hit a bump, it breaks free, and everything loosens up on you. You're going to hear some rattling, and it's going to be unsafe overall. Now we can put on the other adjustment plate. Once again, The numbers on one side of it are going to be facing out and away from the frame. This adjustment plate needs to be inside the grooves on this ear as well. Continue on to your other washer and your locking nut. This squared out notch right here is for a 3/8 drive ratchet. That's so you can easily make an adjustment on this. And it holds it still so you can continue tightening. Now when this is inside the frame, what you want to have is the adjustment directly above where the bolt is. Typically when you go to the alignment shop, they're going to go ahead and pivot things as needed. But when you're putting this in now, just have it so it's in the straight up and down position. Now I'll just go ahead and tighten this nut. Okay, before I go ahead and bottom that out, I'm just going to double check my adjustment. I can go ahead and pivot that now. Now we can apply a little bit of pressure underneath the lower control arm. Be very careful for any pinch points. You don't want to damage anything. And of course, make sure you don't shift your vehicle off of your lift or your jack stands. All right, at this point, the control arm is in the ride height position. What I mean by that is as if the vehicle was sitting on the ground. All the weight of it's on there, it's going to make it so the control arm comes up to this position. Now the next thing we want to do is just make sure that the cams are in the upright position, essentially one hole's over the other. Now I'll continue snugging this. Now that we have that bottomed out, let's continue on by torquing this to 98 foot-pounds. Go ahead and remove your tools. Okay, so now that we have that side in, the next thing you would want to do is grab onto the other set of hardware. You'd want to come over to this side of the control arm, slide this out of the way, and then the process will be the exact same thing. You already have the lower control arm in the upright position, so you should be able to continue on by removing everything, reinstalling the new parts, and then torquing it as necessary. Let's go ahead and make sure that the ABS wire is resecured to where it needs to be. You don't want it getting caught on anything. Okay, so we've got everything torqued here. Let's continue on by lowering the lower control arm. Now after you double check everything, go ahead and put your wheel on. We're going to line up the wheel with each of the studs, start on all the lug nuts, bottom them out. Once we have all of them bottomed out, we'll carefully get the wheel back safely on the ground and then torque each of the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Of course, if you have a center cover, go ahead and put that on now. Looking at the backside, you're going to find one area that protrudes out further than any other. That needs to fit into one of the grooves where your lug nuts are. Pick any one, line it up, knock it in. Okay friends, we got the truck back together. We made sure we torqued everything along the way. At this point, you can go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test, listen for any funny noises, and get yourself safely down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.